I'd like to call to order the December 19th Bristol, Virginia City Council meeting. At this time, we'll have a moment of silence. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I don't have too many comments tonight. Just hope everybody has a safe Merry Christmas, Happy New Year holiday period. I will say that we went to New York City and had a good, productive meeting with Moody's and Standard & Poor's on our credit rating. It was a series of several-hour meetings, but it went well. I thought city staff did a fine job of where we are financially and the policies we're putting together, so we're optimistic some positive things will come out of that series of meetings. It's important that the city takes financial responsibility and gets their credit rating as high as possible for the future, so we'll see how that plays out, and I think the city manager might have more details on that topic. Any other council comments?
Just one thing I noticed on the agenda, and I asked last week for it to be placed on the agenda, and I was advised by the city manager that to hold back. We did not have any legislation that's been put forward. We talked about this about a month ago for an APA request to audit the city, and time is of the essence now, and since we don't have the money to do our own audit and so forth because we just don't have the money, that would have been the next best thing, and you advised me not to do it yet. Something's cooking, or this, and this. Those are your words. So I'm asking you, where are we on getting an APA evaluation or asking for an audit from the state?
I've had a discussion with Delegate O'Quinn. He is going to determine what needs to be done on his end in order to get that to happen. As far as what the city needs to do, the way I understand it, there's really no formal action that the city needs to take. It basically just needs to come as a request from me to do that. I had that discussion with Delegate O'Quinn last Tuesday.
Well, does that mean you're going to make the request?
Once I talk to Delegate O'Quinn and get more detail about what he's willing to do for the city, I will make that request.
Okay, other comments?
Other than wishing everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
All right, city manager?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Mayor Mumpower and our visit to New York. We were advised yesterday that Moody's has increased our credit rating significantly, which is a good thing for the city. Not exactly sure how that's going to play out over the course of our borrowing here over the next several weeks, but I would think any increase in our credit rating is a good thing, and it should give lenders a little bit more comfort in knowing that we are doing exactly what we need to be doing as a city financially in order to move forward and make good financial choices so that we can stay on a proper financial footing from this point forward. As Mr. Hubbard stated, I want to wish everyone a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Be safe out there, and if there's anything that I can do for you as city manager or city attorney, let me know.
All right, moving on. Is there any agenda items before we get into the regular agenda? Any proposed changes? All right. Moving on to regular agenda item number 1, consider second reading and adoption of an ordinance to amend the zoning map from general industrial conditional M2C to moderate density residential R3 for property described as parcel 297-2-2 located on Gordon Avenue and Island Road. Staff report.
Mayor and council members, as I did give the full staff report at the meeting last Tuesday, so I won't go through that again. We did have the properly advertised public hearing, and the Planning Commission, following the staff recommendation, was to recommend the rezoning, and the Planning Commission also recommended the rezoning. You all, the council, passed the first reading, and so tonight you have the second reading. And just to remind you, the ordinance is a zoning amendment or rezoning, and that's what it addresses, the rezoning.
I'd just like to remind council that this is the ordinance for a zoning change. That's the only thing before council tonight, is whether or not this should be rezoned from MC2 to R3.
Okay, looks like we got one person signed up for public comment, Michael Pollard.
Thank you. My name is Michael Pollard. I live at 101 Ashley Drive. At the last meeting, there were some concerns concerning the rezoning, which is from an M2C conditional, which originally included some conditions regarding buffering. There was a concern expressed by one of the residential neighbors, Ms. Fisher, and I was wondering two things. One, if any legal obligations on the part of the city concerning that buffering have been addressed. And two, if the concerns of Ms. Fisher have been addressed, whether with the city or whether with the property owner.
There are no legal concerns at this point, and any concerns that Ms. Fisher or the developers have been addressed as well.
Okay, so they've addressed it between themselves.
Those issues have been addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other person signed up for public comment, asking for a council motion on the second reading.
Captain only.
Caption only.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Second.
Motion by Mr. Fleener, caption only, second by Mr. Hubbard. Any council discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Fleener.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend the zoning map from general industrial conditional M-2C to moderate density residential R3 for property described as map parcel number 297-2-2 located on Gordon Avenue and Island Road.
All right, council motion and second for adoption.
Move to adopt. Second.
Motion by Mr. Hubbard, second by Mr. Wingard. Please call the roll.
Fleener.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes. All right, number one passes. Regular agenda item number 2, consider second reading adoption of an ordinance to repeal and reenact 8.07 Economic Development Committee.
Move motion to reenact, get rid of that EDC thing and caption only there, please.
Just real quick, we have public comment. Did anyone?
Everybody signed up, good.
Is there any staff report at all?
Well, the only thing I wanted to say is we've discussed this last week. There was no change to the,
Okay.
I take that back. There was, I have to do this. There was one change to the wording in the second sentence. It previously read, the Economic Development Authority of the City of Bristol shall have all the powers to induce manufacturing, industrial, et cetera. That industrial was changed to,
Economic.
the economic was changed to industrial.
What you just said, I move that we do that.
Okay.
Caption only,
Second reading with that change.
okay? Yes, second reading with that change.
Okay, no
Second.
one signed up for public comment, so I've got a motion by Mr. Fleener and a second by Mr. Hubbard, caption only.
An ordinance to request a charter change to the charter for the City of Bristol, Virginia.
All right, any council discussion?
Beautiful.
All right, please call the roll.
Fleener.
Oh, yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes. All right, council motion and second for caption only of the ordinance adoption.
Move to adopt the ordinance.
Okay.
Second.
Mr. Hartley made a motion to adopt by caption
We
only.
need a second?
Mr.
We need a
Fleener.
second? Don't need a second.
We need a second.
Okay, second.
Second by Mr. Fleener.
Yeah.
Caption only. Please call the roll.
Fleener.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes.
This is an order to amend the charter of Chapter 12, barring Section 12-2, the debt limits. With these changes, previously, it stated that the council would by a supermajority vote. Those language has been changed to by 4 affirmative votes, and also scheduling the election within 30 days has been stricken, where the referendum would take place at a regularly scheduled election.
Mr. Eads, do we adopt the language in this ordinance that was suggested by Mr. Pollard at the last meeting to make sure that there couldn't be the incremental?
We did, yes, and that's another change. Thank you, Mr. Fleener. That language said for any one project or any subsequent project related to the initially proposed projects.
And is that it? Is anybody,
That's it on my part.
public comment? Is there anybody?
So you guys jumped to number 3.
Yeah, this is, yeah, we did 2.
There's one person that signed up for agenda item number 3, which was Nancy Marnie.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Nancy Marnie. I'm a resident of the city of Bristol, Virginia. I'm a property owner. In this particular issue here on the debt limit, I agree pretty much with everything you've come up with except 1 or 2 things. And as we all know, the devil is in the detail. The devil is always in the detail. Now, I oppose having a referendum. I think the city is too small for this. I think that a referendum would bring out a very low number of people, and it would also allow itself to have too much mischief. A referendum would not, I don't think would even, a referendum would be a single issue item, as opposed to having an election for city council. Those are 2 entirely different things, apples and oranges. But I think on a referendum, there would be a wide area here for mischief, bad mischief. And I do not think the turnout for a referendum would be conclusive in any way, shape, or form. And in a city this small, too often the people who vote are very limited in their knowledge of the details. Now, if city council, any city council, has withheld information, then they should be removed. If they have withheld information that would have helped people make an intellectual or even a common sense vote, then if they're withholding, they should be out. The devil is in the detail. I do not think in a referendum on a single issue, which it would be, I think that's dangerous. Now, if you want to have a hearing, I have no problem with that. Bring them down here to this council meeting, just like the crowd we have tonight. Let them come before this council in a scheduled meeting and voice their opinion. And if you have to sit here till 12 o'clock that night and listen to it, fine. You wanted the job, you've got it, keep it or get out. If it takes till 12 o'clock, do it. But the devil is in the detail. I'm opposed to the referendum. I think that we do not need the expense, though the expense is not my issue. But I think it's very difficult for the city to hold special elections. But this could end up being a one-issue item, and I am opposed to doing it by referendum.
Thank you, Ms. Marty.
Miss Nancy, Miss Marty, can I ask you something? First of all, I missed you last meeting. I know it was real cold, and I'm glad you're back here tonight.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said we missed you last meeting. I know you weren't here. It was too cold.
Thank you, I appreciate being missed. I think
you're
that's awfully nice, thank you.
Now, would you, the only problem, first place, I don't think that this language and so forth is going to really matter because we're so far in debt. It's going to be so long before this council could borrow $15 million or whatever.
Yeah.
It would be a long time off. But would you consider us tabling this for some possibilities, like, for instance, instead of going to the expense of a public referendum, maybe we look at having a arbiter, that we would have an independent arbiter come in and make a decision based on the financial circumstances and so forth and so on. Ms. Marnie?
Mr. Fleener, I'm going to say no, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I think we have to keep this thing within a proper context.
Okay.
The city council is an elected body. The very citizens you're talking about being involved in a referendum are the same people who should have voted for the councilman. Now, I take voting very seriously. I mean, I take that seriously. And I think that an arbiter, I can also see your point. I think you have made a valid point. I may not agree with it right this minute, but I can see validity in what you're saying. I don't think an arbiter would really, I would not want an arbiter to make a decision that I think should be made by 5 members of the city council.
Well,
however, I do think that the city council, and I have seen some city councils who should have been stood up and shot, and I would not have wanted them to make a decision like we're talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
I would not have wanted that at all. But I do not think that offering a referendum is the solution. It's open to too much mischief, and Lord knows we've had enough mischief in elections. But I think a referendum as a single issue would even open the door more for mischief, and I don't like mischief. Might like my own mischief, but I don't like mischief in things like this.
Not at the time of Santa Claus. No mischief right now, okay?
No, I'm not insinuating that.
I'm just kidding.
But to answer your question, I'm not in favor of that, but I do think you make a valid point, and perhaps there is a better solution from what I'm offering. But I still think the city council should remain strictly public about any of these issues, and people should know far enough ahead to make plans if they are interested. They should have the information, they should have the details, they should have everything it takes, and come before this or whatever council.
The reason I'm asking you, I use the terminology arbiter. We could use a substitute judge from somewhere up the road,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, but it's very clear to me that had we had some other option in place, that we wouldn't have been vested in the project at Exit 5. I think that
If we had had another governor, we wouldn't have had Exit 5.
Yeah. But I think based on what she said tonight, it makes perfect sense to me. Maybe we probably do need to table this for some further discussion and come up with perhaps some.
That I don't know, Mr. Fleener. I will leave that, I think I would rather leave that decision to council.
Well, thank you so much for your insight and your remarks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, seeing no one else signed up for public comment, what's the pleasure of council?
I think we need to table it based on what Ms. Marty just said. I mean, it makes a lot of sense what she's saying. I think we can pool our ideas together on this council and perhaps get some input from the community further. Referendums do cost money.
Well, if you're putting them with regular elections, they're going to spend the money anyway for the election. You're just putting another thing on a ballot, just like the state of Virginia puts those items each year for the referendum.
Those,
They
yes.
totally have nothing to do with the political election. It just has to do with what the state wants to do on certain instances.
And I agree with what I also think what you're saying is very accurate. I think that you use the phraseology mischief. I would use the word that there'd be a lot of politics behind the scenes. Let's put it that way. And this might be a way, if we could figure out a reasonable way to make sure the public is alerted there is a public hearing and so forth and so on, and we come up with some new choice of words of what we're going to use. Maybe that's the thing we need to do. You know, we're not going to be spending the $15 million in the next month or two. So if we table this issue tonight and come back and put some input in, I don't think that necessarily is going to be a bad thing. I mean,
May I address one of his remarks?
Sure.
No, it would be Mr. Hubbard's remark. I think
Oh, no,
Mr.
you can't talk about my remarks.
I think that Mr. Hubbard made another remark here that also has validity. If a referendum were combined with an election, it would help reduce the fact that the referendum is a single issue.
That's
And
that's what we have in the thing,
That's
is
the way
that
the
only to
language
be
is
done during elections.
All right.
That
but
would be May and November.
If you put the referendum in with a regular election, I don't know how this would be done, can be. But if you do that, it removes at least a large part of the fact that the referendum is a single issue. And not a whole lot of people, I don't think, are going to get up and come to an election to vote on that referendum.
No.
When they could be voting for council and so forth. But if you separate the two, then it becomes a single issue and the mischief comes up. There's enough mischief going on anyway. But I think you have made a valid point. I think you have made a valid point. You want me to be the arbiter? I'm available.
I'd love it. I would love it. You and Mr. Pollard, I tell you what, you can't get better than that right there.
If I have a party to go to, I won't be here.
I don't blame you. You better give us an invitation. How's that sound? So we won't be here either, but
You want to
Thank
just
you,
put it
Mr.
off another month?
Well, the whole thing behind this was to put it on the ballot during regular
Well,
elections.
that's
That
true.
it
It's
would
a
not be
charter.
a single item. We would not pay to set the machines up and then people come and vote. It would be during regular elections, so every 2 years. And this is a mechanism that will slow down and get everybody's head wrapped around the debt, the project of what the city is looking to do. Because let's say this council coming in behind us, whatever, when the debt gets to a ratio to where the city can borrow more money, wants to do something significantly, and it's a year and a half out before the next election cycle, well, it's going to be a year and a half for everybody to talk about it and really get their heads wrapped around it to understand what the city is wanting to do before the votes are cast.
But that's an inefficient way to do business if we have to wait a year and a half to make a
Yeah,
decision.
I don't think it'd be a year and a half. In Virginia, you have an election every November for something. And every other year, you have an election every May. So at most, you'd wait a year.
Okay, a year.
But it may also be, to go back to what I said at the beginning, to solve this issue, this right here, that Mr. Wingard has brought up and Mr. Hartley. It may also mean that we go right back to what I said in the beginning. Have your referendum hearing, call it whatever you want. Get rid of that word. Call it something else. But have that hearing once or twice, however much, in the council chamber at a public council meeting. And that would get rid of that problem because you could do it in more of a timely fashion. If you did it that way, the result should be fairly much the same without the mischief. I mean, you might buy a 6-pack of beer for somebody out here and say, go in there and vote yes. Here, you come out, I'll give you your 6-pack. I mean, come on, people. But I think that by coming back to the fact that you can still have this in a council meeting or 2 or 3, you may have to have 2 or 3 meetings. Now, in my opinion, on this issue, I'm not as concerned about the expense to the city. I'm concerned about the effect on the city, not the expense when it comes to a decision of this magnitude.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from council? I will say that we did briefly discuss this issue with our financial advisors when we were up in New York, and I would say we don't know all the details, but I say there was some words of caution, right? We'll just say that, right? So I think at least it warrants a couple other discussions to see what their words of caution are, because, you know, our debt and bonds span across just the city. You know, it goes into the school board, and, you know,
Absolutely.
you gotta make sure you understand the ramifications of that. So I thought that was some good advice. So personally, I'm okay with slowing it down to make sure we understand what their perspective was, because we didn't really have time to talk about all the details. So anyway, that's my input.
So,
I agree. I think move to table this issue for at
Make
least.
the motion.
I made a motion.
can I,
I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't disagree, I just want to make, was this a charter change? Would this be something that would,
This would be a charter change, so.
so if
you know,
we table this, basically we're saying we're putting it
Well,
off for a year?
Till next year.
And based on a conversation I had with Delegate O'Quinn, which kind of references what Mr. Fleener asked me earlier in the meeting tonight, there's a possibility if we would put it off to January 9th, that he can still go ahead and
Put
get
it
it
in there.
submitted.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
that's-
we'll already be in place in the
Right.
lineup, so we just
Okay.
add another item to
Yeah,
it.
that's fine. I just wanted to
understand,
understand if
sure,
it's going
sure.
to mean a delay of a year or not.
Yes, I understand that, Ms. Hartley. I think that makes sense, yes. And I tell you what, if we're going to table, I move to table, since we have that luxury or that possibility that if we get something done on the January 9th meeting, if that's my understanding, you're answering the question, we
Well,
can.
I mean, there's no guarantee that he can get it done after
Well,
January 9th, but
there's no, as you've
you know.
already pointed out, there really isn't any rush. If that gets put off for another year, who's gonna know the difference?
15 million, then we ain't gonna be pulling
But
15
he-
million.
I've got it in front of him for the next
Yeah.
session of the legislature
Well,
anyway.
I think
I will say that the Falls was started by the method you spoke of, that's what we should do. They had public hearings on it, nobody came, except
That's
for
the
you.
problem. That's the
And,
problem.
yeah, you guys, but, well, I know it, but that's kind of why we got into this approach, is we've already done the public hearing approach. Hey, guys, come and hear what we're gonna do. Well, they got fed a bunch of bull, and so nobody complained except for you and Michael, but
Yeah, but Mr. Hubbard, there was a great deal of secrecy behind
Absolutely.
well, what was put in public would have been enough to say, what are you doing getting into business?
But there was also a freedom of information charge brought against one of the principals, and it was a correct charge. I was here.
Yeah,
I was here.
Well, I would
Well, I
love,
think our intent's good. I mean,
Yeah.
we know,
Yeah. Oh,
we
yes.
know the process that led up to exit 5 had lots of flaws. So we need a better process. So we need time to divulge this input, what the financial analysts say, what their input is, and come up with what we feel like is the best process.
I second your
okay, but I'm
motion.
gonna say one thing too, real quick, though. I'd love to hear Mr. Pollard and Ms. Marnie's possibilities for the next meeting. Maybe they could think a little bit during the holidays, what we might be able to tweak the language. I mean, you two, if, Michael, you come up with some of the ideas, it's super. And I just think that I'd, like to hear from you guys before January 9th, maybe even, Anyway, motion on the table, I'm sorry.
All right, so we got a motion to table the second reading and adoption of the ordinance to amend the debt limits.
Mr. Hubbard,
By
second.
Mr. Fleener, and a second by Mr. Hubbard. Any other comments? All right, call the roll.
Fleener,
Yes.
Hartley,
yes.
Hubbard,
Yes,
Wingard,
Yes.
Mumpower,
Yes. All right, item 4, consider contract concerning municipal waste and Wastek Energy Solutions LLC. Staff report.
Council, over the past year, the City of Bristol has been working with Wastek Energy Solutions LLC. They are desiring to enter into a contract with the City of Bristol in order to use our solid waste and to begin to recycle that solid waste into a usable product. Based on conversations that I've had with these individuals and their process, this could be a significant help to the landfill in getting the landfill to a neutral on our balance sheet and possibly even allow the landfill to make some revenue for the city. So based on the conversation that I had, based on the contract that has been provided to you all, I would recommend that council allow the city manager to enter into a contract with Wastek Energy Solutions.
Okay, looks like we've got 2 people signed up for public comment. Michael Pollard.
Thank you, members of the council. My name is Michael Pollard. I live at 101 Ashley Drive. The information on this was not provided in advance, and that brings up a red flag to me, regardless of the intent of all parties involved. It seems that anything of importance should be discussed and thought on well in advance. This information, from what I understand, was only provided to the council today, and it has not as of yet been provided to the public at all. So I would recommend that the council table it on that matter. But I have 2 questions of potential concern that can be thought on in the meantime. Perhaps Mr. Eads has answers to these. One is concerning potential liability for the city. Without knowing the details, a lot of contracts have the potential of creating liabilities. For example, we often talk about the city backing someone's application for a tobacco commission grant. From what I understand, those generally leave the city potentially liable should the partner not follow through on their obligations, regardless of whether that grant was intended to directly benefit the city may possibly become liable. In this case, I'm just wondering what potential issues may be in the contract and may not be obvious in the contract. Secondly, I'm wondering what the minimum possible benefit is if things do work correctly, and as to whether that minimum benefit may be worth the effort. I'd also be interested in knowing what the maximum potential benefit, so that we can potentially get excited about the possibilities, knowing full well that they are only that, possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Marnie.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Nancy Marnie. I'm a resident of the city of Bristol, Virginia. I own property, I pay tax. I commend Mr. Pollard for his remarks. I think his remarks are intellectually superb on this issue. I think he's given great thought, and I agree with him on everything he said. So that'll spare you from having a repetition of what you just heard, except I will back it up. Here again, I make the statement, the devil is in the detail. The devil is in the details. Who are these people? Who in the name of heaven are they? Waste and Wastek Energy Solutions? Who in the name of heaven is that? Now, follow the money. Follow the money. Now, it is my understanding, which is not very deep on this, but my understanding is they want to dig around in our trash and end up pulling out what they want for pellets, which will be resold, I can only assume, as fuel. I have read about this in years gone by. I have seen it various places where fuel is made that can be used to cook over, or for people to heat a room, not a house, a room. And this is a very common occurrence in some countries other than the United States. Some of the poorer countries use pellets or something very, very similar. They use it for heating and they use it to cook. Now, if there's a lot of money in this, we ought to be in on it. We ought to get it. Now, yes, if we get in this with them, here again, the devil's in the details. All right, so we keep the tipping fee. Hooray. We're going to get that anyway. All right, we may get another little diddly something over here, but follow the money. If this is gonna be a big-time moneymaker, then we ought to be in on it because we're providing the product. The devil is in the detail. I haven't seen this detail. I don't even know who these people are. I don't think that all business is good business for us. Just because somebody's going to bring in a little money does not mean it's the right fit for us. And I think we should be very, very careful on businesses that are brought into this community. It may look good and sound good, but it doesn't work, or it'll cause us an awful lot of trouble. And quite frankly, I need to know more about this, but follow the money. The devil's in the details.
Thank you, Ms. Marty. All right, hearing no other public comment, what's the pleasure of council?
Mr. Mayor, let me say, there was a condition precedent that we talked about and discussed. And until I see the condition precedent it done and carried out, I can't vote yes on this contract tonight. And I'd be more than happy to discuss that outside of the presence of the public, but I haven't seen it. Unless I see it, it was something that was on my mind greatly. And in fact, I'd followed some of Ms. Marty's logic too, quite frankly.
Could we make that part of the motion that no conflict of interest with any city employee or council member is involved with this contract?
I want to see it before that's what we talked about.
I mean, that'd be the condition. That has to be signed as well as the contract.
And that includes every director, every city council member, any member of the city staff, I guess, would be involved too.
Can we make that a condition upon our approval of this contract?
Yes, you could do that.
And how long would it take to get this done? We've been talking about this for a little time, and I know you've had your hands full, but.
Well, that doesn't have to be part of the contract. All he's got to do is draw up a quick form that these guys will sign that they have no connection with anybody at the city or on council.
And city council needs to sign it also. And family members, I guess, whatever. I mean, here's the thing. I want to make sure we understand. I think this is a good idea, Ms. Marty, because quite frankly, and Michael, I'll tell you, Mr. Pollard, I'll tell you, trash, it's trash. Okay, and if we have a way to make it work, to make somebody in a business to make some money on the other side and so forth, and help alleviate some of our waste landfill expenses, that's what sold me on it, okay? But the only thing I want to do and don't want to see happen, that's why I've always pushed for an audit. We don't have the money for audits, is to make sure that we don't have anyone with their fingers in the pie, so to speak, that shouldn't have their fingers in the pie. And, that was discussed. I thought that would have already been done. It hasn't been done. So I guess we can make that a motion that pending receipt of that information.
Yeah. Before a contract can be signed, these forms have to be prepared to go with it.
That's correct, and it needs to be a matter of public record, and the contract probably since it's a contract between the city and a individual company, it needs to be made per public record also, I think, so people can peruse it and look and so forth.
Well, they can after it's signed.
After it's done, okay.
I second that motion.
Did you get that motion? Did you get that?
Yeah, we authorize
So the
city
motion
manager
is
to
for
sign a contract provided they get the,
Yeah, the motion would be for the city manager to
No
go into
conflict of
contract with Wastek under the conditions of full conflict of interest disclosure with all council members and direct and indirect investors in the business.
That's right.
That have no dealings with any part of the city or employment of the city in any manner.
And upon receipt of that, then you can endorse the contract on behalf of the city. Is that accurate?
Mr. Mayor, I I don't want there to be any uncertainty about my intention here. You're limiting the liability here to members of council and employees. When I said follow the money, let me be sure I made myself clear. When I said follow the money, I'm talking about if this company, now I'm going to pick a figure to make a point. I do not know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to pick a figure to make my point. If this company is going to sell this product for $40 million over there somewhere and all around the world, which they could, and we're only going to get an increase of $25,000 in the tipping fee or $100,000. What I'm saying is follow that money and say, hey, wait a minute, if you're going to get $40 million out of this, we want a cut. We want a percentage of that because we are providing the product. I think you're exactly on target in requiring the councilman and the employees to say, you know, we don't have any interest. I go along with that, absolutely. But I think you should take another step and say, if you're going to sell this for $40 million and you're buying it cheap from us, we're going to get a cut or you don't get it.
Ms. Marnie, let me say this, though. That's, with all respect to what you're saying, I get where you're coming from, but we can renegotiate this contract when it expires. In other words, if this company, which is a startup company, and there's some, they're taking quite a great deal of capital risk themselves. I don't know, we don't know the details.
They should, it's their business.
Correct. And if they take the capital risk and so forth and everything, then, you know, realistically, that's the beautiful thing about capitalism and so forth and so on. If they make the money, God bless them. I hope they do.
I agree.
And if they're making that kind of money and loot and so forth and so on, then God willing that the council that comes when it's time for renegotiation, I'm sure that those gentlemen would be more than happy to, they want to be here, they're local people for the most part, they want to do this, and I have a feeling that contract could get a little bit of a cut to start at the end after this is, if they're successful. But right now, with the capital input that they're putting in and the risk, realistically, we can't guard against every liability issue. I mean, it's impossible. Like I've always said, you can't have a policeman on every street corner to protect a person from getting whatever.
No, but neither should we deny
The
the
contract
fact.
calls for liability protection.
It does, it does.
But
yes.
neither should we deny the opportunity to make some money on a business venture.
We will.
And that's what has happened to this city over
city-
and over and over again.
You're going to be
This,
happy.
you know, this is the meanest council that they've ever had in 20 or 30 years. And you think we're going to give something away just because we're idiots?
Wait a minute, whoa.
You're bordering on it. You may be bordering on it. Don't press that
I
issue.
can promise you we're not giving away the store.
Did he say that we were the meanest?
Yeah.
I can't believe that you would ever
There
accuse
are-
me,
Well, there
Mr.
are
Hubbard.
people who would agree with
I think you'll be, I think you all will be, I think the citizens will be pleased, Ms. Marnie. I really do.
The issues you brought up have been covered and we're satisfied.
And this wasn't a one-time meeting. This wasn't one time. This was extensive, and it's been extensive. And I'll tell you something, when everybody looks through this thing, Mr. Hubbard, I've had my share of fights with that man, and I'm supposed to be a friend of his. But that man right there has been pushing this and pushing this and pushing this for over a year.
That's why he wants to know.
No, I'm waiting on my Christmas
Conflicts
gift.
of interest.
No, I want to make sure there's no conflict of interest because he's pushed so hard. But
He knows I'm retiring at the end of this term.
all praise, Ms. Marnie and people in the audience, all kudos to Mr. Hubbard. Okay? I mean, you give credit to the devil is due, and I'm giving the devil his due tonight in red over here. So, you know, but thank you, Mr. Hubbard.
The mayor has lost
Thank
complete
you.
control of this meeting. I'm sorry. All right, so all good comments. I think in good faith, the citizens will know that we've taken into account everything that was said tonight.
Yes.
And discussed it more than once. So with that said, I think we got a motion with conditions on full disclosure in a second. So roll call, please.
Fleener,
Yes.
Hartley,
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes. All right, next is the consent agenda. Pleasure of council as written.
As written.
Second.
Got a motion as written and a second. Please call the roll.
Fleener,
Yes.
Hartley,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Wingard,
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes. All right, any other
Item C.
public non-agenda items? Any other comments from the public? Any other
Public comment?
matters by the public? Any other comment on non-agenda items? You, it says yes right here, I think, Ms. Marnie.
Well, I've said all, and I've said some, and I've said yes, and I give check marks and stars, and done everything but stand on my head, and I never could do that. Gentlemen, again, my name is Nancy Marnie. I'm a resident of the city of Bristol, Virginia. I'm a property owner. I'm a taxpayer. I go back to my original statement. The devil is in the detail. I'm a detail person. This Ball Corporation turnover has got me very concerned. And one of the reasons I'm concerned, it isn't the only reason, and I'm not going to give you every reason, but I will give you one or two. I'm concerned about the financial status of this whole deal. The devil is in the detail. Now, if we're out here as a city, and I think I'm correct, if I'm not, please correct me gently. If we are out here trying to talk the Tobacco Commission into giving a grant on behalf of the American, whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about, the new owners of the Ball Corporation. I question that, because that means that if they give that grant, if this bunch doesn't make it, we're responsible. Now, they own the property. They own the property. But if they default on that grant, the city's going to have to pony up, unless the Tobacco Commission, in its infinite wisdom and kindness, says, that's all right, Pat, don't worry about that. I think they've done that before a time or two. But I'm concerned about the financial details. Now, I'm not only concerned about the money end of it, to buy it, run it, whatever. I'm also concerned about the waste product. When you get into this type of item, you're getting into something that causes a lot of waste. I don't want them coming to the conclusion that the simplest and easiest and cheapest thing for them to do would be to clean up the wastewater and dump it into Beaver Creek. Now, we've already walked that road and found out that Washington County was the one causing us great problems in Beaver Creek because of their, when they came into the city up here at the Helms Candy Company with polluted water, it came into our Beaver Creek. I think that has been dealt with.
Those are the good old days.
Yeah, I remember that. Now,
Do that.
I don't want to get into that again. I don't want the city to get into something we never intended, or that we said, well, we assume this and we assume that. No, we don't want to assume anything. It is or it isn't. You have it or you don't. You do it this way or you don't do it. Pack up and go back wherever you came from. Gentlemen, I will leave on that, but I will tell you again, the devil is in the detail. Don't lead us back into a situation that is going to get us right back in the same kind of trouble we're desperately trying to get out of.
Thank you, Ms. Marnie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Want me to address it?
City Manager, you have a comment?
Ms. Marnie, I'll address those concerns in regards to the Tobacco Commission grant. You're exactly right. The devil is in the details, and there's a new devil sitting here. So I've addressed all those concerns where if there is a situation where American Merchant is not successful, there are procedures in place that would allow the city to recoup any money that has been given to them by the Tobacco Commission. In regards to wastewater, BVU has been involved in this process for a very long time. They are well aware of what the needs are of American Merchant, and depending on how they treat their wastewater, either DEQ is going to be monitoring the situation or BVU will. So we have gone through all those details, and I feel confident that the city will be protected.
They're going to have an on-site water treatment plant, you know, many one to handle their waste. And that'll be under the guise of the EPA and the DEQ and all those government agencies.
Now, I will submit one remark here. Thank you for your explanation. I appreciate that. I will give one response here to the DEQ. Now, I go back a pretty long way, far longer than any of you all, probably all of you put together multiplied by 4 or 5. The DEQ has not, in my opinion, has not always been at the top of its game. And some things perhaps have been done through the years and along the way that should never, ever have been allowed to continue. That is my opinion. I don't think you can be sued for having an opinion.
No, ma'am.
That is my opinion. But I've been around a long time, and I have their telephone number at home. And I have called them on various occasions and found out that they might be a little bit lacking in their procedure and in their knowledge of some things that might be very important to this city.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Ms. Martin.
All right. Next item, executive session pursuant to 2.23711.A1 Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body, personnel. Need a council motion and second.
Move to go into executive session pursuant to all that stuff you just said.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Fleener,
Second.
second by Mr. Hartley. Call the roll.
Fleener.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes. By roll call vote, council members certify that only business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements as specified in the motion to convene the executive session were discussed. Please call the roll.
Fleener.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.